I'm 57 years old, and I like to think that, particularly for my age, I'm pretty damn fit. So in the last week, what have I done? I've done a 5 mile run, I've done a 10 mile hike, I've done a 6 mile hike, and I've done a 15 mile mountain bike ride, quite a technical mountain bike ride. Uh, but as a life coach, one of the things we need to do is to be honest about ourselves. And this is why I'm making this recording, this video today. I wasn't always fit. I wasn't always healthy. In fact, 9 years ago, possibly 10, can't remember now, I was an alcoholic, and I suppose technically I still am. So 9 years ago, in the last week, before I gave up drinking, I was drinking a bottle of whiskey a day. And then for some strange reason, I stopped. It was an afternoon. I still had half a bottle of wine to drink, and on any other day I would have drunk it. I would have made myself the same promise that I was always making then, that I'm going to stop, I won't have any more tomorrow. And then for some reason I stopped. I just thought, I don't want to do this anymore. I think the reason, I've thought a lot about why I drank, and it wasn't because my life was particularly horrible. I think, like a lot of people, I was trying to use it as a way of running away from reality. And I think, well, this is my interpretation. I could be wrong, but I've thought about this a lot, and I hope I'm right. I think my problem was that I was always going into relationships with women that I knew, even from the start wasn't a good idea. And I can only assume it was because I was scared of being on my own. And so quite shortly, or quite soon after the start of a relationship, I'd feel trapped. And I'd feel either unable or unwilling to end the relationship. But anyway, I managed to give up drinking. And if I could work out precisely why I managed it, I could make a fortune. I didn't have a lot of help. I had some help from friends, and I had some help from my mum, and a very good friend of hers, a guy called Mike. I was living in France at the time. I phoned up my mum and told her how bad things had got and that I was stopping drinking. And at the time, I was scared to be at home, in my own home in France, where I lived on my own at the time. And she said, come back to the UK. So I managed to get back, and her good friend Mike, and also a reformed alcoholic, took me to some AA meetings. But I quickly realised that I didn't need them. I could kind of do this on my own, and I did. And so the upshot is that for the last 9, possibly 10 years, it's that long ago, I can't even remember the date. I can't even remember the year. It was February, but the year, I can't remember. But that's irrelevant. But since then, I've not had a drink at all. There have been a few moments when I've thought I'm going to crack, I'm going to have a drink, but I've not done it. And I'm very proud of that. I'm very pleased that I've managed to not give in. And giving up drinking has definitely been one of the best things I've ever done. My life has turned round incredibly. And I think possibly giving up drinking has lit the blue touch paper for me. Shortly after I'd given up drinking, my daughter told me that she was going to do a half marathon. And a few years earlier, my dad had died from Alzheimer's. He was diagnosed in his mid-50s. I'm 57 now. He was dead at 66, and that was shit. Probably one of the most awful things I've ever had to deal with. And because I felt guilty at his death, and I know that guilt is a common feeling that people have when somebody close to them has died, I felt as though I needed to do something. And at the same time, because I'd given up drinking, I was feeling fitter. I was starting to do a bit of running. And so when my daughter said that she was doing the Chichester Half Marathon, I asked her if we could do it together and do it for the Alzheimer's Society's the charity fundraiser. And she said yes. And so I did that with her. It was a hard run. It was particularly hard for her because she had a knee problem and she was in a lot of pain for the last 4 or 5 miles. But we stayed together, we started together, and we finished together. And it's definitely one of the best days I've ever had. Very proud of her. And since then, really kind of lit the blue touch paper under myself. I was starting to get fitter, but I think I also realised that if I wanted interesting, exciting things to happen for me in my life as a sober person, then nobody was going to knock on the door and say, come and do this, come and do that. And so I'd done the half marathon, but for me, possibly the sense of guilt over my dad's death, I needed to do a penance, I think. I needed to do something that was really hard, because a half marathon, 2-3 hours, and it's done. I was living in northern France at the time, and so what I decided to do, I decided to go to my dad's grave, to visit his grave on Father's Day, and I decided to walk there from northern France, which was about 450 miles. And I decided to do it to raise money for the Alzheimer's Society. So I planned it all out. I knew when Father's Day was, so that was my final day. Worked back from there, planned it out, worked out that I thought I could do 20 miles a day on foot, and have one rest day in London with a friend and one rest day in Birmingham. And I did the walk, and it was bloody hard. But I did it, and made 3,000 quid for the charity, which pleases me enormously. I was on a radio programme with BBC Radio Lancashire talking about the walk, which was fantastic. Wrote a book about it, which I think might have even sold 15 copies on Amazon. But that was great. And then had 2 or 3 weeks in Lancaster, in Lancashire, where my dad's grave was and where my mum lives. And then flew to Bilbao in Spain and decided to walk across the Pyrenees solo with a hammock. And I'd done about 2/3 of that, probably about 600 kilometres of the 900 and odd kilometres. And I met a guy called Steve who was a pre-marriage counsellor, a very nice guy. And at the time I wasn't happy in France. And my thoughts were, well, whereabouts in France should I move to then? Because I could sell the house, go somewhere else in France. I'd been there for 15 years. I never expected to come back to the UK. But But in the course of conversation with Steve, he asked me one question. And the question was, who do you love? And the answer for me was, my 2 daughters and my mum. And the supplementary question, which Steve didn't even need to ask, was, and where are they? Well, they're in the UK. So what the hell was I doing in France? Anyway, a few days after parting ways with Steve, I was walking up yet another hill in the Pyrenees when I suddenly thought, nope, don't want to do this anymore. And got down into the nearest town, hitched a lift, got a ride, got back to my home in the north of France, put the house on the market, and moved back to the UK. And I still hadn't finished with doing extraordinary things. And one day I was working, I had the radio on, I was listening to Jeremy Vine, and there was a programme about altruistic kidney donation. And I kind of knew that, you know, a family member could give a kidney to another family member. But what I didn't realise was that you could give a kidney to a total stranger. And I listened to the segment and I decided that's what I'm going to do. I got in touch with the transplant coordinator in Preston, went through all the tests, and about 4 years ago, I think it was November, I was due to go into hospital and donate the kidney. Just to backtrack a bit, just before then, in the latest round of bonkersness, I'd run the Morecambe Bay Cycleway. And the Morecambe Bay Cycleway goes from Walney Island near Barrow-in-Furness down to Glastondock near Lancaster, goes all the way around Morecambe Bay, 81 miles. The cycleway had been open for just a few years and nobody had run it. So I decided to run that as well. Again, for a charity. I did it for the local hospice. So I did that in 3 days. So basically that was 3 marathons in 3 days. So then I went into hospital to have the op. Obviously I was in great shape by then, probably the fittest I've ever been. The operation went fine. I woke up, recuperated, and now I'm back to normal. So what's the moral of this tale? I suppose the moral of this tale, well, I suppose 2 messages from this, from my experience. One, if life's not going well and you find yourself indulging in toxic behaviours, that could be drinking too much, which is what I did, or drugs, or irresponsible sex with people you barely know, or smoking, or gambling, anything, eating too much. You can get through it, but you've got to be very honest with yourself. You've got to be prepared to look in the mirror, and you might not be able to do it on your own. Now, I'm not suggesting I as a life coach can help you with this. Possibly, probably not. Probably more of a job for a therapist, which I'm not. But it can be done. So think about this. 9 years ago, 10 years ago, I was drinking a bottle of whiskey a day. Since then, I've done a 450-mile solo walk. I've done a 600-kilometre solo walk. I've run 3 marathons in 3 days, and I've donated a kidney to a stranger. That's quite a lot. I suppose the other moral of the story is that if you want life to be exciting, then you have to make that happen yourself. And for me, I've had a couple of years where I've not done anything particularly crazy, but that's going to change. Hopefully next year, 2022, if international travel's possible, I'm going to take myself off to America and cycle from Oregon to either Tennessee or North Carolina along the Transamerica Trail, 5,000 miles. And as preparation for that, this year, I'll probably do Land's End to John O'Groats and other smaller stuff. So, life is what you make it. So, if you're listening to this, thank you for listening. If you have your own view about what life is or how to make sense of it, please comment below. And thanks for listening. Bye-bye.